Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Bikes for Death podcast. As always, my name is Patrick, and I'm your host. And on today's episode, I am happy to welcome Matt Annabel to the podcast. While you were drinking eggnog and opening the presents that Santa Claus brought you, Matt was starting his attempt of an AZT 300 yo-yo. And while you were watching the ball drop or lighting fireworks, Matt Annabel was still out riding his damn bike on the AZT 300 yo-yo. Today, we are going to talk to him about his experience out there on the Arizona Trail. For what it's worth, this was not an official ITT. He was out there doing a tour with some other goals and intentions behind his ride, all of which we will be discussing on today's podcast. One thing that I found kind of cool and interesting about Matt's AZT 300 yo-yo was how little preparation and planning went into it. And we're going to break that down in today's episode. But he is no stranger to the AZT. Over the last 15 months, he has put in 2,000 miles on that trail. So he knows the trail. He obviously loves the Arizona Trail, as most people do who have had an opportunity to go out there and ride it. And he did it on a single speed in true legend fashion. We had a fantastic chat about his experience out there, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. I do want to offer a quick apology because it's been a little while since I released an episode of the podcast, and all I can say is I'm sorry. I had gone on that bikepacking trip to Oaxaca, and when I got back, I got sick. And while I was sick, my computer completely died. Dropped it off at the repair shop, and they had my computer way longer. It was way more complicated, et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, I apologize for the delay, but I'm so happy to be back in your podcasting feed in this new year. And I've already got the next 3 episodes lined up. So we're going to be coming into your podcasting feed on a more regular basis. And I'm really excited to be here. I hope you're excited to be back. And with that, let us get into today's episode. But first, let us take a moment to thank the people that made today's episode possible, starting with our latest batch of patrons. So this week, we'd like to thank Pierre, Reed, May, and Matthew Hall for signing up to be sustaining members of the Bikes for Death podcast. And we'd also like to thank Christopher T. and Mike Christensen for increasing their monthly contribution. We really appreciate the support, and like I always say, we cannot produce these episodes without your help. So thank you very much. And if you appreciate these episodes and would like to help out, you can find out more over at patreon.com/bikesfordeath. And today's episode is also brought to us by my friends over at Old Man Mountain. All right, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. It's a new year, and I've got Eric from Old Man Mountain. Eric, how you doing, buddy?
Yeah, doing great.
Awesome, man. Well, yeah, ready for a new year?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we're going to find out real quick, huh? Well, it is a new year, and in true Old Man Mountain fashion, y'all are releasing new stuff. But this time, I know you got more products coming down the pipeline, but y'all are releasing today a experimental bikepacking team. So sounds experimental, sounds exciting. What is this experimental bikepacking team? And maybe tell us who's on it as well.
Yeah, definitely living up to the name. Bikepacking is a pretty social or solo endeavor, depending on which side of it you're on, whether you're going out just for fun or if you're racing, it's a solo event. So how are we throwing a team into that is kind of what we're trying to figure out. The experiment is, we got 5 racers on board that we've chosen from a huge list of applicants. I want to thank everybody that applied. If you're listening, it was incredibly hard to choose. But basically, we want to take this team and try and do everything we can to work together to prepare before these solo endeavors to go like, what's the emotional support? What's the, intel we can share with each other of like, hey, I did that race last year and this may look like a good place to camp, but it sucks. Keep going another 5 miles or something. Sharing strategies on how to fuel and eat during the race and stuff like that. So as much as the physical side is huge in racing, the mental and emotional side is just as big, I think. And so we'll see what we can do. We got five awesome people that we picked. Like I said, incredibly, incredibly hard. But they're doing races all over the world. They have pretty stacked calendars, and we're not running this like a Tour de France team where we're sending the whole team to every race. It's more we're supporting them to get to the races they want to go to. So the five riders we have are Hannah Simon. So she just came off a win of Silk Road mountain race last year. This year she's doing Hellenic Mountain Race, Bright Midnight, the Alps Divide. Mateo Paz. So he previously has done the Tour Divide and the Atlas Mountain Race. Right now, he's powered through a bunch of sloppy mud in Ecuador and Colombia. Paula Berber, so she's riding all over the world this year. So she's doing the Japanese Odyssey, bikepacking the high Andes of Peru and Bolivia, the volcanoes of La Vuelta, and Valle de Mexico, La Tour de Frankie Ultra in Mexico, and then she's currently riding Sierra Mixteca in Oaxaca, Mexico.
Yeah.
Pardon all my pronunciation on this stuff. We got Eric House, who he's probably got the craziest calendar I've ever seen. He's basically doing a major ultra every single month.
Wow.
So aside from just testing himself in all these individual races, he's also just going to be testing his recovery constantly. So doing anything from like Atlas Mountain Race, Hellenic Mountain Race, Stagecoach 400, the Bright Midnight, the Silk Road Mountain Race, the Arkansas High Country, and I think I'm probably forgetting some stuff that he's covering. And last but not least, Stephanie Hall. So she's up in the Northeast, and she's going to be taking on Hellenic Mountain Race, Vermont Super 8, the Log Drivers Waltz, and then she's in Vermont, so they got some snow, and she's doing a bunch of fat bike extended adventures that she's been working on in creating the routes and events for those as well. So yeah, it's going to be a crazy year. It's basically we got Old Man Mountain, we got Silka Velo coming in helping support the riders, and our the Brand Raw Raxa project as well.
Man, that's so cool. Three of my friends and three former guests are on your experimental bikepacking team, so that was kind of cool to see. I think Hannah Simon and Eric House will be at East Texas Showdown this year, too. I've gotten verbal confirmation on that, so they'll add one more to their race calendar this year, it sounds like. And I have to say, I love that the team is supporting each other. And so really it sounds like the entire team is trying to help the whole team kind of rise to the top or just perform at their best. And I think that's a really neat approach to being on a team.
Totally. Yeah. It's like I said, these races are solo endeavors. And so it's how can we create community and support before and after? Obviously there's some encouragement during, but we don't want to get anybody disqualified. So we'll do what we can to just stay in each other's minds and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, that's wonderful, man. And if my listeners want to use some of the gear that the experimental bikepacking team is going to be using throughout the 2025 season, I think we have a coupon code for them over at Old Man Mountain, right?
Yeah. It's Mountains or Death. It's good for 10% off everything on the site.
Wonderful, man. All right, dear listener. Well, that's it from Old Man Mountain. Go to oldmanmountain.com. Use that coupon code to get 10% if you see something you like. Thanks for coming on the podcast, Eric.
Yeah, thanks for having me as always.
All right, take care. Bye-bye. And just a quick plug for the East Texas Showdown. That is happening on March 27th of this year, so it is coming up. We've got 195 people registered, and we've got space for 250. So if you want to come ride your damn bike in the East Texas Piney Woods and see what all the hype is about, we would love to have you there. It is a great time, but don't just take my word for it. I'm the race director. I am biased, but we've had hundreds of people come to East Texas, and the feedback is unanimous. It's a great route. It's a great experience, and we would love to have you there to add to that experience. So to find out information about how to register, I've got the link to registration in the show notes. All right. Ching, ching, ching. The bills have been paid, and now it is time to get to my chat with Matt Annabel. But first, let's have my friend Miles Arbor kick it off with the Bikes or Death theme song.
You load up your bike, you ride away from home. You're could be with your friends, or you could be alone. You ride for a day, or maybe more. You just love being in the great outdoors. Everything you need is strapped to your bars, including that new pillow you got from Santa Claus. And then you think, oh shit, to yourself. You left that super lightweight tent on the living room shelf. Bikes or death. Bikes or death. Podcast.
It's nice to just connect with, I don't know, people on a real and genuine level, you know, and not just fucking Instagram and everything else. I mean, it's the other thing behind the podcast is like getting to know people for real. So with that, Matt Annabel, welcome to the Bikes for Death podcast, man. It's an absolute pleasure to get to chat with you today.
Thanks, Patrick. I'm stoked to be here.
Absolutely. And I guess right off the bat, it's worth saying congratulations on your AZT 300 yo-yo.
Yeah.
That is an absolute fucking badass way to close out one year and ring in a new year. So when did you start and when did you finish it?
Yeah. So, first off, I'll just point of order and honor for those that care, which I am one of, that I wanted to clarify that what I did out there was a tour. It wasn't an actual ITT. I didn't follow all the ITT rules. While I was out there, I went and visited a friend in Tanque Verde and slept in a free bed, ate her food, all those things. So it's not technically like a thing that time would be counted against, but it was a thing that I don't know if it's been done before. So I wanted to, and I planned to ride it like not super aggressively, but you know, not slow either. So I thought maybe people would be interested in watching it, but the idea didn't come together until when was it? The night of the 23rd of December, and I had a couple of holiday trips planned. One over Christmas, another over New Year's, and they both kind of went off my calendar around the same time, and so kind of unexpectedly. And so I was like without plans for the holidays, basically, and kind of sitting at home thinking, oh, I could, you know, just buckle down and do some work. But I'd been since early December, this itch to go visit the desert had been pretty strong in me, and so it was pretty quick after those other plans fell apart that I was like, I'm going to go to the desert. I'm going to go see my friends down there. I'm going to go ride my bike in the red rocks and feel the joy and the sunshine and all that. And so, but that was like the 23rd of December. And I didn't have a plan to go down there and do the yo-yo. I threw my bike in the back of my truck. I threw a bikepacking bin without really having gone through it in the back of my truck. And I just started driving down that way. And later that evening, the sun went down. I was crossing into Arizona from Utah, and I started thinking about this idea that, well, I probably have enough stuff with me that I could go hop on the Arizona Trail at Picket Post, and then just ride south on the trail until I'd hit the snow line on Mount Lemmon or Oracle Ridge or wherever it was. I didn't know. I didn't look at it at all. And so I started texting a few friends down there about this and that maybe we'd hang out before or after I did that. And one by one, they're like, there's no snow on Mount Lemmon. 0 right now. And so I don't know why, but like it happened pretty instantaneously. The idea in my head was like, I should ride to the Mexican border and back then, or as far as I could get within the time that I had, which was about 9 days that I had open. And so, yeah, I drove to Flagstaff that night of the 23rd, and then had to confront the reality the next morning that I hadn't really packed for a big 8-9 day mission. So I didn't even know what I had exactly. And so I drove over to the Flagstaff REI and I started kitting out my bike and figuring out what I had and what I was missing. And I made I think 2 trips into the store to go buy things that I didn't have, and then headed south for picket post. Stayed at the Copper Mountain Motel. If anyone knows that, it's in Superior, Arizona, and it's a special place. I'll just say it that way. And it's only a few miles from the trailhead. And I started the next morning, which was Christmas Day, and I was out there until I think the 3rd of no, maybe it was I forget which day. Maybe it was the 3rd. I think I finished on the 3rd of January.
Yeah, that's freaking wild, dude. Like I said, I mean, as a bike packer and everybody listening to this podcast can relate. I mean, we can't pick a more epic way to, close out a year and ring in another year. And for the record, I don't know if this is a record or not, but I contacted John Schilling because I was curious if anyone had ever done the 300 yo-yo before.
Yeah.
And he's also not aware of anybody who's done the 300 yo-yo. So if anyone out there knows anyone else who's done a 300 yo-yo, please let us know. I'm sure we'll just be curious. John also made sure to mention in true John fashion that was not an official time.
Yep.
But my slogan is go ride your damn bike any way you want to, and obviously that's what you wanted to do at that time. And so, pretty cool. He also mentioned, just worth noting, I guess here, I can't remember the guy's name. I should look it up. Let's put some respect on this gentleman's name real quick.
Yeah, great.
Somebody did this old 750 route back in 2019. Dave Wicks. So Dave Wicks yo-yoed the 750 back in 2019. So cool. Y'all might be the only 2 people to have yo-yoed on the AZT. So anyway, pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'll mention one other thing. This was a secret actually at the time that I only told one person before the Arizona Trail race. But I had in my head going into the race this fall that there was a chance I might yo-yo the 800. And I looked at it. I planned it in case the opportunity arose that I might, the stars aligned or whatever, that it would work, to the degree that I had shipped stuff to Payson in a way that if I thought I was going to do the yo-yo, I would have forwarded that on to Flagstaff, what I would want on the return trip. So there was planning put into it, some effort, and what it would look like to turn around at State Line, where I would need to get water coming in there and then going back. I looked at all that stuff, and so and then I didn't do it. And the reason I didn't tell people about it was because I wasn't sure if I could or if I'd want to. And what ended up changed, why I didn't, there were a number of reasons. Ultimately, I decided I really wanted to race the 800, balls to the wall to the end, because I was in this train of friends, all on single speeds, super competitive. And by the time I got to Payson, I was already making moves, in terms of how little I was sleeping and what gear I was bringing forward, not that it was that the yo-yo was out of the question, because I would arrive at State Line destroyed.
Yeah.
And so I kind of committed to the 800, and I don't regret that at all.
Yeah.
But as it comes back around to this 300 yo-yo, that was kind of a unfinished business in my mind, that I wanted to do some sort of big yo-yo type thing on the trail that I didn't get to do this fall. And all of a sudden I had this window where I could do something like that. And so that kind of fed it too. So,
dude, the idea of yo-yoing the 800 is just wild, because you have to, you do the Grand Canyon, you ride whatever 20 or 30 miles or whatever it is to the end, you turn around, and then you're right back in the Grand Canyon. What a fucking kick to the teeth.
Oh, I so wanted, I do miss, I'm bummed that there were so many things I thought about, what would it be like to do to get to State Line, and all your friends, there's a bunch of them are there, and just like give them hugs and turn around and go back. Like how I wanted to know how hard that would feel. And then to see whichever friends were still out on the trail to have to pass them, and knowing that they were going to be done in a few hours or a day or whatever. And like
Yeah.
you're still in it for another couple weeks, maybe. And
But
then, like you
also,
said,
you'd be getting a lot of fucking cheers and attaboys and all that kind of stuff too. I mean, people would be fucking hyped to see you coming back down the trail too. So it's not going anywhere, man. I mean, that's
yeah,
now you've
yeah.
done the 300 yo-yo. You might be the first person to do both yo-yos. Again, first one wasn't official, but still, you rode the miles, you rode your damn bike.
Yeah, no, it's and I don't need it to be official. It's just kind of more of a soul journey, that one. And yeah, if I thought I'd do the 800 as a yo-yo ever again, I think I'd invite some crazy friends to try to convince some other people to do it. Not with me, but like in the way that we do
Yeah.
together. So
Yeah, that would be cool, man. That'd be cool.
see.
Well, since this is your first time on the podcast and first time we're getting a chance to meet, I wanted to, we're obviously going to dive into the yo-yo, but there's some getting to know you questions I have and just some questions when I was researching you that I just have to ask. So let's get to know Matt Annabel a little bit. Yeah, nothing too crazy. I promise. I'm going to be gentle. I mean, an easy one right off the bat. I mean, I'm always curious, like when and how people like found out about bike packing and got into it, like what was your starting point when this, some would say crazy, but I would say wild and wonderful world of bike packing?
Yeah, so I haven't thought about that in a while, but my first experience with bike packing, it doesn't fit everybody's definition of bike packing, but it was a group that basically not guided, but they did all the logistics around the Kokopelli Trail as a 3-day trip, and that's a trail that goes from near Fruita, Colorado to Moab, Utah, 140 miles. And I did it a few years with this group called Biker Pelly, where all we had to do was ride, and they would take all of our stuff, to camp, and they'd cook all the food, and it was kind of like a catered trip. But by some people's definitions, that is bike packing. And even though it wasn't carrying bags or the such, it was still like camping from a bike, sort of. And so that was like the toe in the water thing, like that biking didn't just have to start and end indoors every day, that it could start and end outside in a camping situation. But the first time I put bags on my bike, I'm pretty sure that was like late 2019, and started just, had a pretty simple setup. I live in Carbondale, Colorado, and there were some overnights that I was interested in. Interestingly, like those early trips that I did have now become part of a route that I put together that I had published this last year by both bikepacking.com and Bikepacking Routes. It's called The Rolling Horse. And so I don't know if I shared this story, but like one of the very first overnight bikepacking trip that I went on solo with bags on my bike, like self-supported. A big chunk of that is part of the Rolling Horse route. And so there's like this bit of, that's a cool thing for me. My very first trip became part of a pretty soulful project for me down the road. But
so that route's 465 miles, if I remember correctly. How long was that first bikepacking trip?
I think it was 2 nights, 3 days, and it went through the Elk Mountains. And I had planned to like ride from home back to home, and I kind of ran out of time and got picked up about 50 miles from home on that one. But it was still like a big mission and super successful. I packed way heavier than I ever would now.
We all do. Yeah. So your first like solo self-supported was a real proper adventure, because I was reading about your route. I actually wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of plug that route a little bit, because I have to be honest, there's so many routes out there right now, which is one of the great things about where we're at in bikepacking, that I hadn't heard about this one yet. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to plug it and get other people out there riding it, at least put it on their radar, you know?
Oh, heck yeah. I appreciate that. So that the Rolling Horse was a 3 year, it took me 3 years to put that route together. I didn't start with intention of doing it or ever having a route published, but it was this time last year where I decided that was important to me to actually like button it up and put it out there, share it with the world as a thing. And but I had been out there like riding sections of it, like all the pieces of it. I'd never, before I had it published, I hadn't ridden the whole thing contiguously, just in like 2 or 3 day chunks. And so, but one of the things that's kind of, I don't know if it's totally unique about it, was that I wanted to document the historic significance of a lot of places along the route and share
Yeah, I love that.
POIs and the points of interest for the people that would appreciate that, because it is a route that traverses native lands, Ute lands in particular here in the region of Colorado that it's in. It was Ute land. And there's a lot of really important history that relates to Ute culture that's all throughout it. I didn't call out any archaeological sites or that sort of thing, but there are, like the town of Meeker, Colorado, if you know the history of Meeker and the Meeker massacre, or that's the not so nice way of putting it. It's basically it was an event that precipitated the final displacement of the Utes from Western Colorado. The Battle of Milk Creek and what happened in Meeker, Colorado. And I won't go into the details of that. People could look that up and read about it, but it's pretty, you feel it out in the landscape, or I did. Like you can visit the battle site at Milk Creek, where basically the U.S. government invaded Ute sovereign lands at that time under treaty. The U.S. government came across that line, and the Utes attacked them and basically held them, kind of surrounded for 6 days until some U.S. cavalry reinforcements came. And then the Utes were sort of pushed back. And from that point forward, the Utes were on their back foot throughout Western Colorado and basically got pushed out within the next decade or so onto reservation land. So that's a very powerful thing that for people that want to go and understand that better, the whole route is on Ute land. Like, and if by the time you get to that spot on the Rolling Horse route, you've traversed, if you're open to it, your mind's open to it, if you've read about it, like you've traversed so many meaningful places for Ute culture that, for me, it landed pretty hard, like arriving on that battlefield and seeing the monuments and everything. I felt a lot there. And so that was the thing when I visited that site I think it was late 2023. I did a tour that went through there, and how hard that landed on me. It was like, oh, I need to finish this route and put it out there. And it's not just Ute history that's shared. There's a lot of like, mining and farming, frontier history, historical sites along the route as well that, people could choose to visit and learn from or acknowledge, or they can just ride the route. Nobody has to get into all this stuff that interests me about it, but it is there. And I wanted to include that for people that do appreciate it, because it's, I don't know, I'm big on learning and growth. So that felt, and it is a historic landscape. So, so I put it out there. I shared it with both bikepacking.com and Bikepacking Routes last year, and they both were immediately interested in publishing it. And, then rolling into the summer, I put a lot of love into it. There are a few sections of single track that I know have a lot of down aspen every spring, old dead aspen forests that fall across the trail. And so I went out and cleared those, with the hopes that it would help people explore the route earlier, or like early in the season when it's a good time to ride and after the snow melts. And a few people did. Some friends, to my knowledge, only 3 people have attempted the full route. This is just to my knowledge. And 2 have completed it. One of them is myself, and the other is Francis Hacker. And I don't know if you know Francis. Francis is awesome, and came to Carbondale and launched and finished it while I was out on the Colorado Trail race this year. So I didn't get to see Francis, but we talked a bunch during it.
Yeah.
So, and otherwise, I don't know that anyone's attempted it. I've had dozens of people reach out for information about it, and I'm hopeful that this next year, some more people will take it on. But it was interesting to me, like, because the route got a lot of attention. Bikepacking.com awarded it one of their several routes of the year.
Oh, hell yeah.
So, it's been out there. I've heard from a lot of folks that are interested in riding it, but I don't know that it's actually been taken on by many folks yet. And it made me think about, like, how many of those routes that are out there are like that. That's probably true of a lot of them, because these things are big undertakings, and the Rolling Horse might take some people like 2 weeks. So to carve out 2 weeks takes a year or two for some folks. So
I think part of it is like geography, like where you're at in Colorado, there's so many options. Whereas like here in Texas, there's not many. I had the first published bikepacking route on bikepacking.com here in Texas. And this was a couple years ago, but I went out and rode there. Along the way, there was 5 other groups, whether it be, I say groups, it could be 1 person or 3 people, but just, 5 different, individual groups that were out there riding the route at the same time. But it was the only published route in Texas at the time. And so now there's quite a bit more in Texas. I have more, and Maxwell Johnson has some. Anyway, point is, you got a lot of competition in Colorado. And I do want to say that I love the historical component. That's something to me that is very important with bikepacking, in creating, educating people about the history of a place, and, educating people about the outdoors and flora and fauna, and really engaging people in the environments that they're riding through. Like, that to me is so important. And it doesn't have to be everybody's jam, but I think that's a huge opportunity, like you said, to grow from in a different way, not just physically and mentally like we talk about, but there's all these other auxiliary growth opportunities that are available in bikepacking. And so I think that it's really great that you included that. And since we've had so few people ride it, why don't you give us your pitch on why people should ride it? What's your elevator pitch on the Rolling Horse route?
Oh, so it's this, it basically does a big loop around this geologic feature called the Grand Hogback, which is it's basically the uplift where the Colorado Rockies like punch their way up through the Colorado Plateau. So the hogback is basically this tilted up sandstone feature where, the volcanic stuff kind of the Rockies kind of pushed up this side, and it's this really abrupt ridgeline. Anyway, you get to traverse all the way around that thing, exploring several different mountain regions that are all geologically and geographically very different, from the flat top mountains to the Elk and the Ragged Mountains, to stuff out on the Colorado Plateau that's way more sandstony, to the Rhone, where there are still wild horses running. It's such a expansive, the geography changes so much as you go around it. And it's not just the mountains, it's the towns and the way of life around them. Places like Aspen and Crested Butte, where there's so much affluence, to little towns like Rifle and Meeker, Colorado, which are really working land based places with a lot of blue collar folks. and you get to see the differences in the way that land is treated, managed between those two places. And so there's just a lot to see that's really beautiful, like Colorado mountains in the middle of the summer, wildflowers, to ag field, like Western Colorado ranch land, which is, I love both of them, and there's just so much to see and learn and explore along it. It's not a one thing type of route. It's like a 20 thing kind of route.
Probably 100 thing type of route.
Right.
All right, people, will go out there and ride his damn route and let him know that you rode it so we can get some more people out there on the rolling horse, man. I mean, it sounds epic. I was reading all about it on your website and checking out the pictures and everything, and it's super cool. Worth mentioning, your website is fucking phenomenal. Mofo Go, Mofo Go, which stands for Move Forward Go. It's a great resource. One of the things about you, man, is you are a fucking wordsmith. You tell stories in a way that is beautiful. You're just a wordsmith. I think that's the best way to put it. Like you write with so much like passion, and you can like really feel like a lot of feeling. I guess that's a good way to write it. Like you write with a lot of feel. And so you have a journal on your website that has a lot of stories. And there's one story that I have to ask you about. Do you know which one it is?
I would guess. I could guess. Does it have to do with I'll let you say
it. No, you say it.
What did I call that story? Justice for Dildos.
Justice for Dildos. That is that's the next topic on the Bikes for Death podcast. So I want you to know, first off, this is a dildo safe space.
Yep.
We're not afraid of dildos here.
Good.
And I also want to say, so I want you to tell the story. You can paraphrase it any way you want to tell it. It has to be told. Indiana Schultz, who's obviously a big part of this story, he's been on the podcast 3 times. He's out on his epic adventure right now, traveling the world. And he and I have been texting, and I'm going to have him on the podcast. So whenever he comes on, I'm going to get his side of the story too. Hit me with the, wait, what did you call it? The what for dildos?
Justice for Dildos.
Justice for Dildos, yeah.
Yep.
So what is that story?
I'm going to have to shorten it because it would take like half an hour to tell.
Yeah. Give us the cliff notes.
So basically, I'm going to everyone's going to have to take a leap with me here a little bit. Indy ended up with a massive gash across his nose this was the 2023 Arizona Trail race. And he and I ended up kind of in the same spot around the time that this injury happened. And I know the real reason, the real cause of that wound, but the thing that was, tried and convicted of causing that face wound was a dildo thrown from a vehicle. So everybody's just got to take that. No, we were riding up it. I mean, it's ridiculous. Like the truth of it is ridiculous. We're riding up this highway, short section of pavement after Saguaro Lake to get on the Four Peaks Road. And that section of highway is called the Bush Highway. I'm just going to say that. That's true.
I'm glad you said that. Yes.
And Indy's riding behind me, and we're going up the road, and all of a sudden, and the phrase that I used to describe how it sounded, Indy just starts laughing like a donkey on whippets, like just like kind of wheezy, laughy sound. And I'm like, what's going on back there? And he said, did you see that dildo in the ditch back there? And I said, no, I didn't see it. And for whatever reason, I think because it was really hot and we were suffering, we didn't stop. We didn't go back and like fully document the thing, which is like a regret for both of us because it probably should have come along with us, like strapped to someone's helmet or something for a ways.
Right.
But we just like laughed it off. And anyway, we're going up the Four Peaks Road, and it like, having seen that, like, just spurred this hilarious conversation. The Four Peaks climb is long, like 4 or 5 hours, and it's hot. And I think we talked the whole way up that, about like coming up with this story about like him getting smacked in the face with this thing instead of like what actually happened. And we talked about like this idea of changing our race names out there on the trail. Mine to and it's a name I still use on the Arizona Trail, to Root Beer Hero, which has nothing to do with the dildo story. It has to do with what happened the night before. John Schilling had I'd lost my tracker. John returned it to me at the resupply in Gold Canyon, and we were in line at Subway, and I'm getting a big glass full of root beer, and I said to John, if I could just get root beer and cheap pieces of meat along the way out here, I'd ride like a hero. And so that's where Root Beer Hero comes from.
Okay. But that was another one of my questions.
What's that?
That was another one of my questions, so we can check that one off.
Oh, good. I knew I was going to have to squeeze that one in to tell the rest of the story. But Indy, so on the Four Peaks climb, we're deciding like what his name should be. And it was this real toss up between roadside dildo or drive-by dildo. And I can't remember if he decided along that climb which of those two names, but anyway, it was just like a funny idea in our heads at that point. And we kind of like, at some point stopped talking about it and just leaned into the suffering again. But we, continued on. It was the next day we finished this really technical descent called Gold Ridge that dives down onto pavement. And then at the time we went through, there's a bar called Jake's Corner Bar that was open. And we stopped at this bar to get burgers and, root beer and other things. And
cheap meat.
Cheap meat. Beer, exactly. And we're sitting at this table, and it's like a kind of a gruff biker bar. And with these two like dirty bike packers that walked in, kind of just, when we arrived, I think, kind of, just struck from the day, like barely walking, and we go to this back table and we're sitting there, and for whatever reason, I don't remember the exact reason what got in my head, but I just pulled up Track Leaders, and Scott sends out, when you register for Track Leaders, he sends you a link where you're able to go in and change things. So I just went to that link and I changed my name to Root Beer Hero on Track Leaders. And I told Indy what I did. And because we hadn't talked about actually changing our names, it was just like this theoretical thing the day before. And he goes, no, there's no way I'm going to no way. He's like, Mom's watching, like, I'm a Triple Crowner, because he was doing the Triple Crown. There's all these people watching. Like, I'm not going to change my name to something with dildo in it. And I was like, okay, whatever. And so, like 5 minutes later, he just like bursts out laughing, and I'm like, what's going on? And he's like, I just changed my name to Drive By Dildo. So, which kind of precipitated. So then there were these two dirty bike packers in the back of this biker bar, laughing our asses off like we're drunk on root beer, and just having a great time. But yeah, that's the gist of the story. We got in our heads that the next day that name might get disallowed, and which is there. It's another layer to the story. I'll save that for anybody that wants to read it, because it's
yeah.
But yeah.
I'll link this in the show notes. It is link worthy, or just go to mofogo.com and check out all your writing. But this story needs to be immortalized for time, all memoria. It like just has to be out there. So, yeah, because you go through the whole. Y'all were talking through the logistics of, because I think the dildo was found like 8 miles up the trail or something like that. So like, how did the dildo impact his face and then get up to the trail? And you went through all these different scenarios and landed on one that made all the sense in the world. And just the whole play-by-play is fucking hilarious. That's the other part of your writing, is that there's a lot of a lot of humor in there, and so it's entertainment, good entertainment to read. So,
I
all
won't
right,
give away any more secrets about that, but that is where the name, like, it's the reason I ride as Root Beer Hero is like, uh, is the best part of my 2023 Arizona Trail race was that time. I spent 4 days with Indy after that, like Root Beer
yeah.
Hero and Drive by Dildo. And as we were going through the pine forest on the Mogollon Rim, there were echoes of root beer and dildo, like all to each other. So I think I'll always ride with that moniker, even though, like, I don't know, there's probably better ones.
No, man, it's yours. You got to own it. It was born out of like an organic way on a bike packing trip with your homie. Like,
Yeah.
it just doesn't get any better than that, you know. And I know Indy. I was super curious about the whole dildo name. I mean, Indy came and yo-yoed my East Texas Showdown route. Like, I think the second year or the third year we held it. Second year, I believe, he yo-yoed it. First and only person to do that, by the way. He's an absolute legend, but he did it. At that time, he had the Mohawk, and I believe, because I rode, my first race was in 2018, and we both rode in that together. It was a 500-mile race here in Texas, and he wore a pink tutu for that, and he brought his pink tutu out for my East Texas Showdown. So, I mean, for me, knowing Indy, like, he throws out a name like Drive by Dildo, I'm like, yep, that's Indy. I don't think twice about it. I just think that's part of his personality and character and stuff. So, and I think it's fitting. I think it's perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that name, it's full of love and joy. Those two nicknames for me anyway. I hope for him too. Sure.
Yeah. I'm sure it is. I'm looking forward to talking to him. I've been really excited to hop back on and see how his trip is going and everything. And that whole story about his face getting cracked open and him super gluing. I mean, what a fucking badass. That year was tough because it was hot. I wasn't out there, but I know it was a really tough year. And so, I know he really fucking gutted it out on that year to super glue your face together after getting hit by a flying dildo, and keep going is just incredible shit. That's the good shit right there,
Yeah. Super tough. I mean, the super gluing part was one thing, but like he got hit hard. He had a huge shiner from that, like a couple days.
Yeah.
It was probably like concussion territory or almost. So like, and that was one of the reasons we started riding together after that injury happened. It was like, just be good to be with, and we were riding similar paces anyway, but it felt like the responsible thing to do to just make sure, my friend is okay. So
yeah,
okay,
that's nice of you.
So,
all right, let's talk about your AZT yo-yo.
oh yeah.
The fucking yo-yo, man. So I read that you had ridden 2,000 miles in 15 months on the Arizona Trail. Is that right?
Yeah.
And that's leading up to this?
That's pretty close. Yep. Because I had done the 2023 Arizona Trail Race, the 800. I did a tour on the 300 route this spring in April, and then came back and did the 800 again this fall. And the 800 is not 800. It's like 837 miles. And the 300.
And the 300 isn't 300.
Yeah.
It's like 323 or something.
I'm pretty sure it's almost exactly 2,000 miles that I'd been on it before, all in the last 15 months. So yeah. And I'm got plans to be back this year too. So the stack, either like Alexandra and Johnny Price, like they've been out there in this kind of density, I think, in the past. But I do have like a pretty special relationship with that trail now that is not that old, but I've been on it many times recently. And it's kind of I don't know. I went down there this time for healing purposes, I think. And it did heal me a lot. It did kind of serve that purpose, but it's also, it's kind of, that saying, death by 1,000 cuts.
Oh yeah.
So if you only got 1,000 cuts in you and you go to the Arizona Trail, you're only going to make it a couple days. You got to sign up for the Death by a Million Cuts plan to go down there.
No,
So
that's a good line.
So, and so definitely, I'm a week out from it now, and I'd planned to ride it in a style where I'd rest a lot and have time to write along the way, which I did for the first half, and then, but I wasn't going fast enough to get done in the time. So the second half, I ended up having to push my body more than I wanted, and so yeah, there's no going easy out there.
No, not even if you wanted to. There's no such thing as going easy out there.
Yeah.
So I have a couple questions here. One, do you know, I mean, can you articulate what it is about the Arizona Trail that for you keeps drawing you back in time and time again?
The way I keep my brain happy is and functional is like to push my body physically. I have, and we talked about this a little before the call, but I got diagnosed with ADHD this year that I did not know that I had earlier stages of my life. And there's medication that helps me with that, has side effects for me. I don't like to be on it. And so I try to I try to live my life in ways where I don't need to lean into that too hard. And I know when I'm out there on the trail doing these things that I don't need that medicine. Like my body chemically can do all the things that it needs when I'm out there on the trail. And so there's this huge draw for me just with any ride anywhere like that to want to be out on the trail. It's like the easiest thing a lot of people, like, I think the narratives we put around these events or like these tours, they're big, hard things. And they're physically hard, they're mentally hard. But for me, and like the challenges I face in my brain, and like being happy and keeping moving, being out there on the trail, no matter how hard it gets physically or emotionally or mentally, it's the easiest part of my life. Like, it's way easier than being a dad. It's way easier than, being a husband, partner, or whatever. It's like way easier than going to work.
Yeah.
Like for me, so I just want to be out there like any chance I get. And I had this window for this one, and I wanted to be out of the winter for a while. I wanted to be down in the warm sunshine, feel that on my skin, feel the wind on my skin, not be in a jacket, And so in all those ways, it's super healing for me to be out there, even though it's like a harsh environment where there's a lot of stabby, pokey, bitey things. And I'll say, like, yeah, I'd never gone southbound before. And there's a thing that people wouldn't necessarily know that have ridden northbound. So I've ridden northbound several times, and that's kind of like the direction of flow on the trail, especially right after the Arizona Trail race, where like a whole lot of racers just went through northbound. So there's a thing that happens with the cat claw out there, that it gets kind of like declawed as you go, like as a number of riders go through in one direction.
Yeah.
Nobody declawed it going southbound.
Right. And I'm envisioning that, over time they'll actually kind of turn towards the direction of the trail, right? So like you would be going more like into them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I think it's,
or maybe not.
The claws some of them get ripped off or broken as riders go through.
Okay.
But they're all passing northbound, and so the other side of those strands has like fully intact claws on it still. And it was shocking, like how I'd forgotten to bring lower leg coverings. I'd sworn after the race this fall that I would never ride it again without lower leg coverings, and then I forgot them. But I was still shocked at like how much it tore me up getting to the border going south, just like cat claw. So, yeah.
Yeah. Pro tip. I have some other southbound questions as we go throughout this conversation because I haven't talked to anyone who's gone southbound before. So there's some interesting features along the trail that I'm curious to get your insights on. But the whole like mental health aspect of or using bikepacking as a therapist is like really interesting. And I think you touched on something because it's like, why is bikepacking such a great therapist? And I think what you touched on really like spoke to me because life is so fucking hard. There's a million balls that for me at least, I feel like I'm just juggling a million balls all the time, from bills to kids to relationships to cleaning the house and lawn, just it's everything, right? It's all of life is your responsibility at any given time. And you're just trying to figure it out and juggle it. And, when you're out there, it does a couple things. One, you're not having to focus on that stuff. Maybe it's in the background of your mind. It never leaves, but, and then you're doing something like really hard. And so it kind of breaks you down a little bit and lets you face yourself in a way that you're not accustomed to on a daily basis. So I was curious to get your insights on your own personal experience with, cause you said you specifically went out on this one kind of on I'm trying to remember your exact word, but a mental health journey of sorts. So how does that resonate with you, I guess?
Yeah, it's, it is like for me anyway, it clears a lot of space in my head. I don't have presence in the rest of my life in the same way that I have presence out there where I can really just be in the moment and like live in the moment, be in the moment. And part of it is these journeys like force that like in order to survive and keep going, things get real simple. It gets distilled down to like, when do I need to eat? How much do I need to eat? Like, how much should I sleep? Where should I sleep? Should I go do that ridge now or should I do it later? There's all these decisions that you make out there constantly that kind of like bring me to a real present place. Whereas in the rest of daily life, like there's so much information and like competing interests for my attention. Some like that should be there and some that I let in that I shouldn't, so, it's just simpler out there, so much simpler. And so being present is like a big part of what I enjoy about being out there. A thing that I realized this time that I never have tried so I haven't experienced it in the past is that like with my work, a lot of my professional work is around writing or video editing or photography where there's a lot of like, computer.
That checks out. Now I know why you're such a good wordsmith. So you're, yeah. You're sharpening that tool quite frequently. But anyway, didn't mean to detract you.
No. Well, yeah, it's just, so I'd never like tried writing in the midst of one of these things where I am like, where the overwhelming, my being is more present. I found it so much easier like to get into writing and have a flow to it while I was out there in that mode than since I've come back or like my normal routine back here. Which was really informative for me. Like I had never tried that before because I'm usually racing and I don't have time for it. And so I don't know what I'm going to do with that yet, aside from I felt a real power in it out there and feels like, well, like if I can combine riding my bike or some kind of adventure, physical adventure, like with productive me, there could be a better like healthier path forward. Like non-medicated path or just like more present and functional path. And so this journey in particular, like pointed that out to me just because it did it in a different style than I had before. But they're all different. The races, I also get a lot out of the races. So much of my friend base and everything has currently and the people that I reach out to when I'm struggling with a thing have come from the bikepacking community just in the last couple of years that I've raced. So there's so many layers to like the mental health and healing aspect of it for me that's attached to bike packing that, it's really been a gift for me to find it.
From a follower's perspective, I thought it was really cool that you were taking time out to do these daily updates, and I would highly recommend that people go and, whether your Facebook or your Instagram, but you posted daily recaps on your trail, and the podcast will offer one perspective, and I think those will offer like a different insight and really tell the story in a beautiful way. So I strongly encourage people to go check that out. And I also wanted to mention, I don't know if anyone's ever written a book about the AZT, but I would like to throw your name in the hat and personally, ask you. I would love to see you use your gift of storytelling and your experience on the AZT to, I don't know. I mean, you're the writer, but I think you would do that trail a lot of justice. And that's a book that I think a lot of people would be interested in reading. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
I really appreciate that. It had occurred to me to kind of combine these stories that I've written about this recent trip into some kind of, I hadn't thought book, but like,
maybe even like a short story or
a blog, like as you saw in that blog, my Mofogo blog site. The first year I rode the Colorado Trail race, I wrote a daily, not out there, but after I got back, I wrote kind of a daily account. And I've wanted to do that with subsequent races. There just hasn't been time for me afterwards to do. And there are a number of races in between and tours in between. Like the last thing I wrote out on the blog site was from the 2023 Arizona Trail Race, which was that Justice for Dildos stories.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much that I've done this past year that I just haven't had time to write about. And this is the first thing that I've really dove in that deep again. So it's kind of, maybe I will.
I would love that, man.
Suggesting it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing is like, it's not just me. I read through like all of your comments, and one through line with a lot of your comments is one, people really appreciate and like resonate with what you're writing. But you get a lot of comments of like, holy shit, man, you're a great storyteller, and so it's not just me, I think that echoes that, like it's or feels that way. I think it's echoed throughout the community that you really have a gift for being able to articulate these stories in a way that like super resonates and is powerful, and that's a gift. So I think that'd be cool. Maybe something to think about. Little side project, you don't have enough going on in your life, might as well write a book too, right?
We'll see. I think a lot of it's just about being vulnerable, and I think that's in writing or whatever, like you with the podcast, sharing your story in a vulnerable way, that is the thing that people either resonates or doesn't with people. And for every person that says that it reached them, I also hear from people that, not to say it doesn't reach them, but it'll tell me, like close people in my life, that it scares them, about that they're worried about me, or that it seems unstable to them or whatever. And some of that's based on being vulnerable. Some of that commentary is like, why, that's oversharing. Why are you oversharing? And some of it's like the physicality of it and the danger of it. But it is interesting how people receive that different ways. But just even if it's a handful that say that it reached them or it helped them in some way with their own processing in their own life, like that's inspires me to sort of keep sharing the way that I do. So, yeah.
Well, I'm a serial oversharer, and maybe, I don't know, I'm just not afraid to speak my truth or whatever's on my heart, and so yeah, it doesn't hit me in that way. And at the end of the day, you do you, man. You do you.
Right.
So I'm curious, like, I'm assuming the way you talked about how this was all super last minute. I mean, you're in the REI parking lot, buying things and putting together a kit to go do the AZT. I mean, you didn't even plan on doing the yo-yo, the whole thing. I'm curious how, physically and mentally prepared you felt going into that experience. Like, were you scared or worried, or was this more of just like, you know what, I'm just going to go out there and ride. I'm going to see how it goes. I'm going to, I don't know if you use the word have fun or work through the things I need to work through, but how are you feeling like going into this adventure?
It was unique for me because usually before an effort like this, I would spend weeks dialing in everything on my bike.
Exactly. Yeah.
Have it packed to the T, like overthink the hell out of it. And like, it would take weeks and so much time and energy. And this one was just so seat of the pants. And I acknowledged that going in that it might just blow up in my face. I had done the whole Arizona Trail race this fall and then done a bunch of riding after that this fall on that bike without doing any maintenance on it. And so it did have, I'd gotten home to a rear wheel that had been rebuilt during the race. So it had a freshly rebuilt rear wheel on it. And then I changed the chain and I changed the rear tire. That was literally like, usually it would have been new
Full
bottom
overhaul.
bracket,
Yeah.
new front tire, new chain
New
ring,
brakes.
new brakes. Yeah, I didn't do it. I forgot to look at the brakes. I had to change them out there, and that ended up being I kind of messed up the repair, and it almost ended the effort. But yeah, I didn't do any of that. I also hadn't really been training for anything, so I've just been kind of like, since the Arizona Trail race, I'd been doing a little bit of riding and a little bit of skiing, nothing hard, nothing with hike-a-bike, which I have ankle and Achilles and foot issues sometimes when I haven't been training for things like that. So I was a little worried I might have a physical issue out there with so much hike-a-bike. And then there was and this was in my head the whole way, because I was worried about my truck. I think other people do this, but so Picket Post isn't like a regular overnight parking lot. It's a trailhead and kind of in the middle of nowhere near Superior, where I don't know, there's a lot of between there and Scottsdale. There's some areas where people go and shoot all the time. There was a long weekend while I was out there. There was the New Year's holiday, and I just left my truck at this trailhead where, it had a bin in it with gear that I tried to hide and stuff. And I was worried that my truck would be trashed they were like, legitimately worried about that the whole way. And usually I would have taken more precaution around all that stuff. But again, it was just like, I got this time. I don't care what happens. It was like this kind of, not in a negative way, but it was like, fuck it, I'm going.
Like a freeing, like just let it go.
Happens. I'm just going to go and see what happens. That was the mentality going in for sure. And always my body, my bike, my truck, like all of it, just like, nope, don't care. Going.
I can see it going both ways, right? Because like if you have a race date on the calendar, then you're gonna, to some degree, I'm gonna use the word stress about it, worry about it, plan. There's gonna be, essentially, you're gonna create a lot of pressure around what happens. So I can envision that, coming in with a lot, very little planning or expectation to do this, it kind of just removes that pressure from the equation and kind of allows you to just, all right, well, I mean, it's going to be what it's going to be. I'm just going to do my best because I'm underprepared. My bike's underprepared. I haven't planned. So I'm just going to go ride and see what happens,
Yeah, totally. It was that. It was just, there was a certain freedom to it that I never get to feel during the races. So.
Yeah, that's cool. So I think with all these experiences, you never know until you like hit the ground, right? Like until you start putting some miles on the pedals or miles on the trail or whatever. You just don't know. It's a question mark. And I think it was even a bigger question mark going into this one, how everything was going to come together. So day one, how was that experience? Like, how did day one kind of go for you?
That was sort of I'm trying to think of a phrase to encapsulate that one. It was really like think of it as a withdrawal sort of thing. That makes it sound like it was a negative day, and it wasn't. But there were a number of levels to that. Like all of a sudden, I'd had these plans with people and for the holidays and stuff, and those weren't happening. I was going to do this thing alone through the holidays now. So there's like that level of withdrawal. There was this reality. I'd been on some seasonal depression medication that I was pretty sure I wasn't going to need out there, but I'd been on it. And not the kind of stuff that you just like cold turkey off of, but that was my intention, to cold turkey off it.
Oh, shit.
And I had some ADHD meds too that I'd been taking to sort of like function my way down there through all this. And so I didn't want those. So like I like the place that I was in, the people I was missing, the drug thing, the medication thing. I call it, never mind, I'm not going to say that. I have a name for, I'll say it. I got to say it now.
I want to know. I can edit it out, but I'm curious.
ADHD medications, which help me. They do. But I call it government grade meth because that's what it is.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I'm not on Adderall. I've taken Adderall for years. I'm not on it. And I don't know. I oscillate between whether or not I should get back on or not. But like you, like there's some side effects that are very unwanted, but also like living with ADHD is very unwanted. And I really struggle with finding that balance. But anyway.
Yeah. And I don't mean to, like I said, it does help me here and there when I need it. And, I'm not trying to shame anybody that's on it. I have this internal like battle with needing like relying on that. I don't want to have to, so
for sure.
That's just a me thing. That's a me hating that I need this thing. So it's not a judgment on anyone else's.
For sure.
Anyway. So I was like weaning myself off of all that stuff out there, and that got really hard late in the day in all those ways. Like I felt some physical withdrawal symptoms throughout the day, and then just the missing of people and places kind of all collided on me late in the afternoon. And then the sun went down, and it's a funny thing, like that. Like I was dreading that all day, the sun going down, because it goes down real early this time of year. And I was like, oh, this is all going to feel worse after the sun goes down because like it's going to feel lonelier or like.
Absolutely. Like, you're living in your headlamp light. That's your world. It gets so small.
A little tunnel. Yeah. But that's not what happened. Like, the opposite happened to me. Like everything sort of cleared out. Like I started to feel better physically. It was just like a chain reaction of like feeling better and that I was in the place that I should be out there. By the time, not even that far after sunset, I was feeling much better in all those ways and just like settling in to this experience.
Oh, that's cool. That's actually what I was going to ask you, if like going through that, if you were like, why the fuck am I here? I shouldn't be out here. Or if you were like, also like, this is hard, but this is where, feeling like this is where I need to be right now. This is what I need to kind of go through. And those, I haven't taken antidepressant, but I think like I've been on SSRIs for anxiety, and I think it's basically the same thing. And getting off of those is no fucking joke. So you went cold turkey.
Yeah, and to be honest, it's not an SSRI. It's it's an NDRI, which works on the dopamine and norepinephrine, and it's easier to get on and off it. Okay. It's related to Wellbutrin, if people know. It's not Wellbutrin; it's like a different thing. But anyway, it's a little easier to cold turkey, or a lot easier than an SSRI, and so for me anyway, and I did. And it was out of me, and like my body took over within 24 hours. I was like chemically feeling like good.
Oh,
So
that's amazing.
yeah,
Did you take? I'm curious. Did you take those medications with you for like an oh shit, or did you like full send? I'm leaving this shit in the truck.
I left it. Yeah.
Oh, dude, you're a
Yeah.
fucking maniac.
It wasn't based in like, that makes it sound like kind of irresponsible, but I've done it before. Like
Okay.
I know that I can step away from it and things are okay.
Okay.
So
All right.
yeah, I would
Probably
not
an
suggest
important
that.
caveat for people listening. Yeah, that might want to replicate what you did.
Yeah,
I've
don't follow me.
I've
Yeah.
talked to other people. I don't want to say the person's name because I might be
Yeah.
wrong. I might be misremembering, but I've
Yep.
talked to other people who have weaned themselves off of like antidepressants and other medications like on bikepacking trips, like just like using it as
Yeah.
like a transitionary healing process, you know. So you're not alone in that for whatever that's worth.
No, and it's like such a good feeling to know, like, I didn't always need these things, these medications, if you will. And so when you find out, or when you get to a spot in your life where like you got to lean on those, it feels like, oh, I'm broken, or that's how I would feel. And um, to be able to still find a space in life, like out there doing these things where I don't need that thing, where my body can kind of take over and do it, what it what it would for a normal brain or whatever, feels good. You know, like that there's something to tap into there. There's like a forward there. So yeah, I'm
Dude,
glad.
the other thing is like that I think about a lot is how our society and this world that the world has created for us and we're living in
Yeah,
is so detrimental to our health, right? Like our mental and our physical health. And it's so telling to me that when we go use our fucking bodies and we're active and we're outdoors the way that, you know, humanity has been for thousands and thousands of years,
yeah,
that those things go away, right?
yeah,
It,
yeah,
and dude, it's this is one of the things I really struggle with as a human being is being forced to live in this fucking society sometimes, you know, at least the way it's like structured. I don't want to like I like people and you know, I love living and everything, but it's just
yeah.
like we didn't get to choose the way that this world, the dynamics and all these pressures and the way everything functions. We're kind of victims of it. We're just rats in a cage, right? And I don't think it's good. And I think this is one of the ways where it showcases how when we're doing the things that our bodies and brains were designed and evolved to do, we're better versions of ourselves, you know?
Totally. And it's this point, I mean, we probably talked for hours on it.
We could. There's a whole
The,
nother podcast here.
there's for neurodivergent people, like with it, there's a lot of different types of neurodivergence, and I have a few of them. And one of the things, so I've been on this mental health journey this past year, like figuring out what those things are and then how to live my life in a way that sort of better fits. One of the things that I encountered, and I don't know to the degree that other people that are on their own mental health journeys encounter, is that when you get to the point in figuring yourself out that you realize you need to live a little differently, or a lot differently to be healthier for yourself, the resistance that comes from the parts of your life that you've been living the other way can be huge, like in terms of like the people around you and how they expect you to come out of this journey. They expect you to come out like a happier version of who you were, not necessarily a healed version that's like different and wanting different things. And so I think, and I don't know if I'm articulating this well in a way that resonates with anyone, but like one of the things that I experienced was kind of a mentality around some of the people in my life where it's like your therapy isn't working because you're different now, or you should take that medication because it'll make you not want this other thing, this other lifestyle or whatever. Kind of like it's kind of like I was being encouraged, and I don't want to overstate this. Like, it wasn't forced on me or any way, but there was like levels of encouragement where it was like, take this thing so you can keep being you. Is like kind of like there's some dystopian thing happening there for me that's like, no, I see the healthier me. It's over there. I'm going to go that way. And they're like, no, take the medication, be here. So,
Well, yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I that resonates with me, because that's kind of how I feel about, like, I mean, we're all victims of this society and this way of thinking. And when, maybe you're trying to go off and do it in a different way, it doesn't make sense to everybody, right. And that can be challenging because, I don't know, society tells us that, you just take a pill and you toe the line and you do it this way, and that's the way it's done. But I'm not convinced it's the right way, so it's a tough question to answer. And like I said before we started recording, life is messy. And as human beings, we really are just all trying to figure it out. Nobody has a playbook. Nobody has all the right answers. And it's not easy. It's not a plug and play type situation. And so at the end of the day, I mean, we all have to like follow our own path and try to find our own happiness. Because the way I look at it is like, the way I always phrase it is, I'm trying to figure out how to be happy in my brain and my body. Like, this is my brain and my body, and I'm on a journey to try to figure out how to maximize it and be as happy and fulfilled as I can be. And I don't know. I don't need it. I don't need confirmation from other people or anything. I'm just trying to figure that shit out,
Yeah. It's hard. And the medications, I think, like, depends what people want. Like, some people want to be more comfortable in the life that they already have, and or it feels healthier when they're on the medications. For me, it doesn't. It feels less healthy. It feels
that's
like
an important caveat. Is, I mean, I think everybody should figure out their own path in life, and mine or yours doesn't have to be representative of like what's right for every single human being. Right. It's all just, so it's a tough one, man. All right, well, we'll stop the. We can pick it back up into here in a few minutes. We'll day 2.
Yeah.
That's where I wanted to talk to you about. One of the interesting features of going south was obviously Oracle Ridge, which is infamous on the Arizona Trail. Challenging for sure, but I don't know anyone who's ridden it southbound. So what is it like to ride Oracle Ridge southbound?
Well, I'll tell you in a second. The first thing I got to say about day 2 was the gift that was that morning to me. I slept in the Black Hills, which it's this real up downy section in the low desert. It's really beautiful, but it doesn't feel like there's a lot of wildlife out there, or there would be, because it doesn't seem like there'd be a lot of water. And I woke up to the sound of it sounded like a million coyotes. And just this, and then I was visited by a skunk that walked up to me while I was sitting there writing an update. It got 5 feet from me and then ran away, and I was feared for my stench. But and then I had in over 2,000. Well, now it's 2,600 miles on the Arizona Trail. I've only ever seen 2 rattlesnakes. I had a crazy rattlesnake encounter later that morning where I didn't see it, and it was over the trail, and I basically rolled right up to it before, my front tire, if it didn't touch it, was super close, and it was cold. It was 55 degrees, and the thing went full, up in the air, which at that temperature it was kind of a hazy morning. It wasn't even that sunny. It was just a really unique experience.
That video on your Instagram is chilling, I think is the right word for that. That rattlesnake was not happy, and it's surprising like you said, 50 degrees, overcast. Like I would assume you're just not expecting to see a rattlesnake.
No, and the trail had sort of trained me that they're not even out there, like
Right.
that experience. So that and I wasn't paying attention, and I almost stopped on top of one. So
So
anyway, they're there.
you referred to that as a gift. What was the gift aspect of that experience? The fact that you didn't get sprayed by a skunk and you didn't get struck by a rattlesnake all in the same day. That would have been a pretty rough start to the day.
Well, just all those animals in a place I didn't expect to
Yeah,
see or hear them, it felt and I feel way more at home in nature a lot of the time than I do in
for sure.
civilization. And I felt so not that they were welcoming me, but like I felt so a part of like the place because I got visited by these creatures and I needed that morning. Like after I'd gone through that first day and sort of the loneliness that could take over somebody's psyche out there. I was like, oh, my people showed up.
Yeah, I love
And
that.
yeah. So yeah, that was the gift of that morning.
I
My
feel
people,
that 100%. Yeah, those are my friends.
yeah, I loved it. And so then, yeah, you asked about Oracle.
Yeah.
So the only beta I had, I mean, I'd been down it several times, so I could have guessed how it would be to go up. But the only actual beta I had was from Alexandra Houchin, who I'd asked sometime this spring, and she gave me a one-word answer. She's like, of the question, what it's like to go up Oracle Ridge, and she said it's gangsta.
I love
Like,
that.
and so fortunately for me, like the afternoon that I climbed it was really overcast and cool. It was probably the coolest afternoon that I was out there temperature wise, which could be a huge issue in going up that because it's there's definitely water. There's water at Hijinks Ranch. There's enough water. There's water. I don't know the name of the creek, but like as you descend off Oracle towards Red Ridge, there's a creek at the bottom that always has water. So not necessarily going to run out of water up there, but to do that, it's really sun exposed. So if it were a hot day, that could be big problem because of the other challenge with going up that is it's so steep and loose. Like you from one section to the next, and it just seems to get like steeper and looser as you go. And so it's harder than going up the Lemon Push, I think, on the other side of the mountain, like northbound climbing Mount Lemon.
Oh, wow.
So it's not just because it's Oracle, it's because you get over Oracle and then you descend 1,500 feet and then you have a solid straight up 2,500 foot climb on Red Ridge to get to the top. And so those two kind of back to back is really taxing.
Don't tell John Schilling. He's probably going to reverse the route now.
Oh, John knows. John knows.
I know he knows. John knows that fucking trail, man. That guy, oh man, impressive what all the work he's putting out there and how knowledgeable he is. It's absolutely incredible.
And he told me ahead of time. We talked about it in the past about the southbound. Like, there's several sections that really are not fun. It's not just Oracle. It's so Ripsey Ridge, which is way back near the Gila, is really long to climb going southbound. There's a place in the Black Hills, you climb out of this wash called Bloodsucker Wash. That's where I slept. I slept halfway up that the first night. That's really long going southbound. And then climbing out of Tucson into the Santa Ritas is super taxing going southbound. And the East Canelos near the Mexican border are brutal going southbound. So
I can't imagine.
all those things are way harder.
They're brutal going northbound. I can't even imagine going southbound. Oh yeah. So speaking of John Schilling,
Yep.
he planted an evil seed in your brain. I'm curious, like when he proposed this idea to you, and I'll let you explain what his idea for you was.
So John, I can't I don't know if I was out on the trail when he did it. I can't remember anymore if it was like well, first thing I'll say about John, I love that guy. I contacted him the on Christmas Eve, like in the afternoon. I think it was the afternoon. I was like, I'm coming, John. Can you help me put this dot on track leaders? And he contacted Scott Morris, and they threw it up there like within an hour, which was awesome. Like I didn't need to have the dot up there, but it did kind of help with the accountability. And
Yeah.
it also helps with like family and friends that want to follow along. And I could give them my Garmin thing, but there's the track leaders is so much richer to watch it on there. So yeah, appreciate John and Scott for that. Somewhere in there, John threw out this idea that I should climb when I got top of Red Ridge. I should go up the above Summer Haven, the section of the Catalina Highway that's locked and gated this time of year, to the top, which it's the start of a trail called Aspen Draw that is the beginning of the Lemon Drop, like the full 29-mile descent, iconic Lemon Drop descent off of Mount Lemmon. And so what John suggested was that I go to the top on the highway, and then, which is off route, it's not on the 800 or the 300 route, and then do the full Lemon Drop, including at the bottom where the Arizona Trail goes left on a trail called Biota. The Lemon Drop turns right on a trail called La Milagrosa that drops down into Tanque Verde, like northeast corner of Tucson. It's like the actual finish to the Lemon Drop. And he's like, you should do that. And then you should hike back up La Milagrosa to get back on to the AZT. And at the time, I was like, oh, that sounds cool. Like, then I get to say I did the whole Lemon Drop. But I don't really know I don't know this La Milagrosa trail. It's like 4 and change miles each direction. I didn't know how rough it was or anything. But I decided I would do that. Like that evening when I got to the Red Ridge finish, I was like, yep, I'm going to go right. I'm going to sleep on top of the mountain, and then I'll do the full Lemon Drop tomorrow.
So how was it, man? Both that whole descending on Lemon Drop, and also, I mean, maybe people would be interested to know what it's like to go down the Lemon Push that's actually on the AZT and how that compares, going down versus going up, essentially.
Well, most of it's like way faster and more fun to go down. All of it is. There's a cruxy section in the middle called Green Mountain that isn't super fun in either direction, but it's still easier to go down than it is up. There's a lot of, so the Lemon Drop, and I don't know how accurate my Garmin is, but all I did that day, it was a shortish day of riding, because I was going to stay with my friend, Lindsay Knoll, down in Tucson that night, or Tanque Verde. But so I literally just did the Lemon Drop and then rode into town to her place where she was. And so, which is not a super long mileage. I think it was like 33 miles, and I had plenty of time to do that. But the sum total like elevation gain and loss for the day was 10,000 feet of descending and 4,000 feet of climbing. So that's the Lemon Drop. There's 4,000 feet of climbing, at least in the Lemon Drop. And I'd never been on La Milagrosa before. It was my favorite section. It's a techie descent, but it goes through this beautiful big area full of saguaros next to some canyons and I did it at sunset. It was super pretty. And it's not part of the AZT because the AZT, follows Biota and comes out of a, different wilderness to the east of there. So, I don't think La Milagrosa would ever be part of the AZT just for that reason, but it was a really fun way to finish that day for sure.
Is it fun going back up it? Because, I know because I read, like, you stay with Lindsay, and Lindsay rode a portion of, what are we on, day 4 here?
4, yep.
And so y'all rode up, sorry, say it again, La Milagrosa?
La Milagrosa, yep.
How is it going up?
Not so rideable. but not terrible either. It's 4 and change miles. I want to say the lower 2 or 3 miles, there's a lot of bike pushing. It's pretty ledgy, rocky. We started early in the morning, so it was fresh, had a long sleep. And so it went, I think, from her place, which was a few miles from the trailhead, to the intersection with the AZT. It took almost exactly 2 hours. So not terrible, not terribly difficult or whatever, but significant. I think about 2,000 feet of climbing to get back up there.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So I think the other kind of critical part of day 4 was when you had to resupply in Tucson before heading to the border and back. So, for anyone who doesn't know, you had to carry food. There's no resupply. I mean, there's that. There's like, I'm trying to remember the name of that one place that I stopped at. There's like a little cafe where there's like a cave tour. What is that cave?
Oh, Colossal Cave.
Colossal Cave. Thank you.
Yep.
But I mean, you have to go when it's open and it's a little bit off course and stuff. And so, if my math is right, you essentially had to carry 275 miles worth of food and water, or at least food, to get from Tucson to the border back to Tucson.
That was my plan. And
there's Patagonia, which you can go off route towards too. So you have some options.
And I did end up having to do that on the way back. But when I left Tucson, my intention was to ride with enough food that I wouldn't have to go off route to Patagonia. So I knew roughly that would take me 3 days based on, I've been on that section of trail several times and knew the pace I was riding, that it would take around 3 days to get back to Tucson. But 3 days of food for me, like as a 200-pound human, is a lot of food to carry. And I thought that I had enough, but the rate that I ended up needing to consume it, I ended up running out, and had to dive into Patagonia on the way back. Never ran out. It was fine, but I wasn't even close to making it back to Tucson.
So I was curious, just it's always interesting to hear, but you go into, the grocery store in Tucson, you're stocking up for 3 days. What do you grab? What are you grabbing and packing for 3 days?
Yeah, it's a mix. For me, I like to have a lot of, I like chocolate. There's like a lot of chocolate involved in it. So there's a mix of sweet things, and then there's some savory things. I like to have some kind of like burrito, or what else some kind of sandwich or burrito to like eat at the end of the day. Just kind of like helps my stomach settle overnight. But otherwise it's a lot of chocolate, some M&M stuff, some gummy stuff. I do try to keep around half of it like sports food based. So in theory, better nutrition based, but my palate doesn't love that stuff out there. So I have to mix it with like the really garbagey stuff in order to keep my stomach happy. I get a lot of pastries, cause they generally have a lot of calories and aren't that heavy for what they are. And they're pretty filling to eat. So a lot of apple fritters, or, I guess it's usually apple fritters is my go-to.
I was about to ask. Everybody usually has like a go-to, the first thing they're looking for in a gas station or convenience store or whatever. So yours is apple fritters.
Yeah, and I had another thing that I don't know if other people do this or not, but I buy blocks of cheese, like the this size block of cheese.
The ones you have to slice.
Yeah, and I eat them, like I just bite off of them out there. And that's another good stomach settler for me. If the sweet stuff's getting too sweet or too much, like the cheese block, and I bought some sliced salami too, pre-sliced stuff, and because those things both will kind of last longer than I am out there in the heat. It wasn't that hot.
That's a great combo. I might have to steal that idea. I like the salami. I haven't thought to carry a block of cheese, but I'm interested, man. That actually sounds good. I'll take some of that right now.
Yeah, it gets all like sweaty and slimy and stuff, but it goes down so easy out there. You don't do a lot
Yeah.
of walking. Yeah.
Yeah. Right on. So the other thing about day 4 that stood out to me, I have a few quotes from you. It's hard not to quote you from your write-ups, but you said, it's as if the border and I are two magnets in opposition. Can you break that down? Like, what were you going through, experiencing, where you were having that kind of feeling at that time?
Yeah, I hadn't really felt it until that day. Like getting up and riding with Lindsay that morning, I started to feel the heaviness of what getting to the border was going to feel like. And it is real. There's like a lot of layers to it, but I mean, one real practical one was like, I know while I'm out there, every mile that I ride further south, I'm going to have to turn around and
Yeah.
come back. And like, the effort is starting to add up, and I'm like doing the math in my head on how long I'm actually going to be out there, and realizing like I'm going to be pushing it a little bit on time. So I'm starting to realize I'm going to need to start riding faster, and I'm probably going to have to sleep less here or there. And so there's all these thoughts kind of spiraling in there. But there's also a thing like, and this is the heavier part of it, in that the border is like where, in all my past experiences there, it's where it all starts every time. Like whether that journey is going to be good or bad or like both, like it always started there. It's like the beginning of the thing. And so part of the feeling of that heaviness or that magnet pushing back was like I was going against the grain. And I was like trying to, I was confronting a lot of, different emotions and feelings related to the border specifically that I knew were going to be heavy to face when I got there, like, or even approaching it, that I didn't know. I was scared of what that was going to feel like. And that knowing at that point, like when I got there to face those things, I was going to be as far as I could be from like my truck, like home, like all those things that, and like alone with it. There's nothing down there. There's like,
Yeah. I was going to say also geographically, it's out there.
so it's like scary as fuck. Like all those things, like I'm riding towards that, like all those things. I could just turn around now and not have to face all those things. But it felt super important, like to get there and to
fight through
like,
that.
even if I didn't make it back, like, or I needed to get a shuttle back or whatever, like the getting there and the facing of that and the finishing of the going against the grain, like the rolling it back, whatever, however you want to say that, like it felt that was the one thing I needed to accomplish out there, was to make it to the border.
Yeah, so I mean that kind of ties into the next day. I mean, it feels like the weight of it and all this stuff is starting to really like, weigh on you, because you said like you had 100 miles to get to the border, and you said I felt in my heart that I'd turn around whenever I slept next, so it was the border or bust. So it's just go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, please, you.
Well, again, there's with every one of these, it's so nuanced and there's so many different pieces to those feelings. But there was a thing like, it sucks to go through the Canelos, like to do it the wrong way in the dark, knowing that you're going to have to turn around and do it the other way, like immediately after that.
Yeah.
Like a brutal thought. And so, and then even
do you think that's more brutal than thinking about doing the Grand Canyon? Like if you were to yo-yo the Grand Canyon, like we were talking about, the 800?
So I have a different perspective on the canyon than I think most AZT. I love the canyon part.
Okay.
Like, it's hard, but there's a lot of things that are suboptimal about being a 200-pound bike pack racer. Like my stuff breaks all the time because I'm 200 pounds, but I have an advantage in the canyon in that, like, proportionally to the load I'm carrying, I'm bigger, and like it's easier for me to get through the canyon. And so I love the canyon. So it's an easy answer to your question. Like, yes, doing the Canelos twice in a row, like, is way suckier for me than the canyon than the thought of doing the canyon twice in a row would be.
All right. Good answer.
And when I went through the East Canal, the West Canals aren't so bad headed southbound, but the East Canalos are not fun because you're biking up, and then the descents going southbound, there's a lot of unrideable stuff or really slow stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're going northbound, it's hike a bike up, and then you actually get a flowy descent out of it. So, and I did all that in the dark in the East Canal. It was dark the whole time, and just this little tunnel of like feeling like I wasn't getting anywhere. And then finally kind of pop out on the 15, 16 miles of roads that lead to the border, which like in my head, this is going to be easier. But by that time, it's like 2 a.m. and I'm sleepy. And all of that stuff was like, wherever I sleep, if I don't make it to the border, I'm going to have to do that part double.
Oh,
so it was like, if I slept at the end of the single track before getting to the border on the 16 miles of road, then I would have had like 32 miles of road.
Right.
So I really wanted that to end at the border that night so that I could have this like mental reset before I turned around and came back. So that was one thing about like getting close to the border and like why I didn't want to sleep before I got there. But the other part was definitely that emotional part of it. Like would I wake up with the desire still to go face that thing, or would it all have become too much because I was like then behind schedule, or like just like sometimes you wake up feeling way different than you went to bed in your head. And that unknown was like, I didn't trust it. So it's like, just get there.
Yeah, the border or bust. Yeah, I'm like, I think my AZT attempt was like 8 months ago, and I'm still scared about going back to the Canelos, and I can't imagine like the idea of being in the moment and realizing that everything that you're doing, you're just gonna have to redo it like the next day. Like it's just you're not you want to use the word trapped or whatever, but I could envision it being very scary, very ominous, and like a real mental battle to like work your way through that,
It was, and it's not my favorite part of the route either. Like the canals are pretty and I like them. And there's parts of the Santa Ritas that I like. There's parts of the Santa Ritas I really dislike, like the Las Colinas section, if you remember that, where it's just like up, down for 13 miles, super slow. And the Canelos headed southbound felt that way too. In other parts of the course, it wouldn't have been so hard to think about like doing them twice in a row, but that southern end is not my favorite. So it's probably the hardest thing I've done like mentally on a bike in a long while, was like getting there that night. So
you did make it.
Made it.
Spoiler alert, made it to the border. And I'm sorry, but I do have to quote you again, because you said, I did the thing I came to do. I made a big pile, like at the border, when you're at the border, you're saying this, I did the thing I came to do. I made a big pile of all my memories and thoughts and feelings attached to this place. Then I lit them on fire and laid down to sleep in the flames.
Yep. There's
powerful stuff, man.
There's a lot underneath that, but it was super, it's true. That's what I did metaphorically.
Yeah.
And it was freeing, of all those, like, it was like I rolled it back. I like not cleared the slate. Like I remember, but it was like, I did against the grain. I got back here, and it kind of like it made the place, it was sort of like, could make new memories there now, or I could like next time I go visit there for the next race or whatever, that I don't have the baggage of like the past with me around that anymore. And so I didn't feel that going to sleep that night. I just like was super tired, and like I did have some intentional thoughts there, but like I tried to just kind of let it all out and went to sleep. And I woke up with the sun. I didn't set an alarm, and had a really beautiful morning at the border with some really strong thoughts around that place. It's a really beautiful place. People think you've been there.
Yeah.
I don't know what your experience was there. If you were
Oh,
there in the beginning.
fucking beautiful.
Yeah. And we have I have preconceived notions of the border based on what you see on the news and things, and it is those things in some places, but it's not where we start the race, and where I ended that night. It is not that place you see on the news. It's a quiet, like middle of nowhere type of landscape, and there's a steel vehicle barrier that's like 3 feet tall and a barbed wire fence, but you crawl through it easily or over it, and it's not really that much of a barrier there. And the stone monuments, the obelisks, kind of speak to a different time, where it wasn't so contentious along the border, I think. And they're kind of beautiful. The mile marker 103 marker, it's not a fence, it's like a monument marking that spot along the line, but not like holding a line like a fence would. So right. I think, like, being someone that appreciates history, like, those monuments kind of land on me as something I appreciate, as opposed to the wall or the fence or whatever. So, and I was thinking about like this juxtaposition along that line that we call the border, of like these ideas of vulnerability versus insecurity, which I've thought about a lot. I think about a lot with my own mental health and like my own insecurities and my own vulnerabilities, and always trying to be vulnerable rather than insecure.
That's a great reason for people to go and read your trip report, because the way you articulated insecurity versus vulnerability was probably the thing that stood out the most to me and really resonated with me, and appreciated that you wrote that. And so that's another good reason for people to go and check out your daily recaps, because I had to force myself not to quote you too much, because you had so many goddamn good quotes. I was like, fuck, I can't just quote them the entire podcast. But that was a good one, and I appreciated you putting that out there.
Oh, thanks, Patrick. I appreciate it too.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate you.
The odd thing about those two words, vulnerability and insecurity, is a lot of people think they mean the same thing or similar things. That it's like that there's a threat, and that you're either vulnerable, insecure about, like, that you're not ready to face it somehow. But they are really different words. And I read something recently that it definitely inspired my thoughts about it. That someone else had written about those two words and like went into the etymology of them and everything. And they have very different roots. But I mean, there's also a very obvious difference in that, like, the insecure is like, feeling like you have to kind of compensate for a thing. Like there's a threat that you should try to protect yourself against. Whereas the vulnerable is like recognizes that threat and like goes forward anyway. Like does the thing anyway. So in my mind, that morning along the fence, like, but knowing there's a wall too, not that far down the line, like it just the ideas in my head were like, well, the insecure are the wall builders, and the vulnerable are the people that would climb through over the wall, like risk everything to do that. And when you put those two words in those terms, you can see the obvious difference. Yeah. That there's courage and vulnerability, and there's cowardice and insecurity. And so, and I take it back to my own mental health journey, and like I use those same phrases on myself, like try to root out the insecurities because like they hold you back.
Confront them through vulnerability.
Right.
Like, I'm gonna be using that in my own journey as well. Like that really hit me. I was like, like ding, 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 you nailed that.
And not saying I don't have insecurities, I do. But it's like, what's your intention?
Yeah. So day 6.
Yeah.
Let's see, what did I write in my notes because I want to get this right. Yeah. So it was like as if your theme of opposing magnets would not let up. You started heading north, but your ride kind of headed south. In that you ran out of food and were having to head to Patagonia on the Legacy route,
Oh
and
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and you crashed and
Yep.
had a pretty good spill. So yeah, I mean, things started to kind of take a turn, a different kind of turn. Some different problems and challenges to face. So what happened there?
Yeah, I left the border feeling like with those strong thoughts, and but it was a super challenging day. I had not slept a lot that night. It was like 3 hours of sleep between when I got there, did my thing, and sun woke me up, and so and I was recognizing probably didn't have enough food. So when I left there that morning, I was planning to go to Patagonia already, by by the Legacy route, like. More in that moment because I hadn't seen the Legacy route yet. So I
Okay.
was just kind of curious. And
Yeah.
it does go straight to Patagonia as opposed to like taking the main route and then getting on the highway or the train track trail and going down. So I had this plan that morning just to get to Patagonia, but I wanted to get there in the daylight, and I was just zonked. I'd ridden close to 100 miles, didn't sleep a lot, like the day before, night before, and then just kind of zonked and out of it. And so, yeah, it took me a long time to get through the East Canelos, and then, suddenly like the sun's going down, and I hadn't made it to the turn to the Legacy. I think I got to the turn to the Legacy Trail like just after sunset, so there's still light in the sky. I did the first mile or so with light in the sky. And I was talking to a friend. It was one of the rare times I called a bunch of people while I was on that Legacy section. I talked to my parents. I talked to my kiddos who were out of the country then, and I talked to my buddy who was waiting in Patagonia that I was going to see later that night. And I remember, this is all the reason I'm telling you this. I told him, I don't know how long this Legacy bullshit's going to last. And he's like, oh, you're almost through it. I literally like got off. It was a text. I like stopped texting him. And like on the next corner, I just put my tire over the edge and like totally ate shit and like tore up my knee and shoulder and everything. And that's what you get for talking smack about the AZT.
Yeah, don't talk shit to the AZT. It'll clap back real fast.
So it wasn't I just lost a bunch of skin. It didn't like bang me up too much, but it was a bunch of skin on my knee. And I made my way down to town, met up with my friends, got some food, like did the resupply. I was kind of pushing I think I was there like at the market an hour before they closed. So I had plenty of time to get food. Then there was a restaurant called the Wagon Wheel that they're like, we could get hot food there. So went over there. And while I was there, the waitress was like talking to my friends, should I get so-and-so? I think his name was Dan, who's an EMT. Should I get him to look at your friend's knee? Because I'm like sitting there with my leg out under the table, and it's just like from my knee down to my sock is just like steady, like stream of blood.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, whatever, I'll deal with it after we eat. But obviously everyone else in the restaurant is like about to vomit. So Dan comes in, and I'm sorry if I'm getting his name wrong, but he like the fire station was like a block away, but he's like, yeah, just hop in my car. We drove over there. He did the initial like debriding of all the wounds on my knee at the fire station and wrapped it up, which I didn't need anybody to do. Like I bought a big bottle of rubbing alcohol at the market. I was in bandages, like had all this stuff, but it was helpful and it was appreciated just to have another human like sort of like that process. So we finished eating, and then I knew like Dan had done a pretty good job, but I wanted to disinfect it some more. And my friend said that the post office was open, so I went over there and sat on a bench inside and spent another 30 minutes like cleaning it out more with the alcohol, and that didn't feel too good, but it works. And then got back on the trail. And I rode out of Patagonia that night for the simple reason that I knew it was going to be super cold to sleep there. And if I got just a little bit higher in the Casablanca Canyons, it would be much warmer. And it was probably 25 degrees warmer, 400 feet high, which was a theme throughout I never slept, aside from one night on Mount Lemmon in the 30s. I think every other night was in the mid 40s or even a little higher. And that was just picking sleep spots, like up on ridge lines instead of in draws.
Yeah. Pro tip. Smart.
Yeah.
So on day 7, your mechanical problems started. You had a crash and ran out of food on day 6, but so you introduced a new problem, mechanical problems on day 7 with your brakes. So that sounded wild. And if anyone's ridden the AZT, you can imagine riding the AZT with limited brake use. So yeah, what was that experience?
Yeah, that was me being impatient and dumb. It's a simple repair. I had to replace my rear brake pads, and I did the thing, and I've got 4-piston brakes, and so the thing I wasn't careful about was I was using a tire lever to reset the pistons, and as I was pressing in on one part of them, like the two I was touching with the tool, the other two were not being touched by anything. And so I pressed down, and the pressure of it just shot one of those pistons out of there. And I've done it before. I knew better. I just wasn't being careful. And that was a real, oh shit moment, because all of a sudden there's hydraulic fluid, not a lot, but some leaking. Those pistons are also really hard to get back in, because you have to like line them up. And I'm in the middle of nowhere with just these tire levers to try to use this leverage. And somehow I got it lined up and back in pretty quick. And then it was like, I finished the repair and just like, oh shit. Like, am I going to have any rear brake? And put the bike upright and just started pumping that lever and like turning the little screw to make the lever actuation go out as far as I could. And after like 30 some pumps, like it started to come back, that it, would grab on the brake. And I was like, oh, thank you. So I started riding and really quickly realized that I was going to have to do that every time before I brake. Not that many times, like it was somewhere between 5 and 15, depending on how recently I'd used the brake. And it was my rear brake. But I was just like, oh, I got to make this work. I'm in the middle of nowhere. I do have brakes, like as long as I remember to do this thing. And I just kind of committed myself to that through. And it wasn't as bad as it sounds. Like most of the time I remembered. There were a few times I didn't. It got really.
And when you didn't remember, it was a great reminder to do it the next time.
Yeah. And it never actually led to any crash. There were a couple close calls, but yeah,
there's close calls if you have good brakes. I can't imagine anyone. I mean, I don't know. My experience was, you're like threading the fucking needle on some of those trails, it's just send it and pray.
So it's New Year's Eve, and I knew there were like mobile bike mechanics that you can call out in that zone that might come and help you. But I figured New Year's Eve, I didn't have their numbers, and I didn't have a lot of cell phone service or want to use the batteries. And so I was kind of weighing in my head that the whole rest of that day, like, should I get this fixed some way? Should I try to get one of those mechanics, or should I try to get into a shop? But again, New Year's Eve, meaning next day is New Year's Day, like shops aren't open. So it would have stalled me somewhere. And so it was really just kind of coming to terms that day that like, this is how I was going to have to ride my bike the rest of the way, and that it worked, and that I could deal with it. And I got proficient at it for sure by the end. So
yeah, now you don't know how to ride with good brakes.
I just like, yeah, all at once. Yeah.
So on day 8, you wake up in Tucson with a bum knee, unreliable brakes, with Mount Lemon staring you in the face, and like 150 miles to go, something like that. And Tucson being the best place to, hitch a ride back to your truck, right? So how are you feeling on morning of day 8, having ridden as far as you've ridden with all these other challenges that have introduced themselves to your ride?
Yeah, I wanted to go and finish the thing. Like I had a lot of motivation still to finish. I also had these feelings that like I'd gotten enough out of it though. So those two were
Battling.
Ready to be done, but I said I was going to do this thing. There were parts of like, I did want to do the next thing on Mount Lemon. I wanted to reverse the lemon drop. I wanted to do that, but between my knees hurting and all the other things described, like it didn't seem smart. It seemed like oh, maybe this thing's like all the things have added up to I should just call it here in Tucson, call a friend or find a shuttle back to Picket Post and be good. But like I didn't want to quit, so there wasn't a whole lot of intention at first. It was just like, and I had to ride. This is a silly reason not to go on, but like I had to ride 5.5 miles back to the route through along East Broadway in East Tucson. There's a sidewalk the whole way. It's not terrible, but like that is not my happy place in bikepacking.
Yeah.
So there's this like junk thing to do before I could get to the part that like where I could actually really test if I wanted to continue. And so I was really just slow pedaling back up that East Broadway. About halfway is the safe way where I resupplied. So I spent a bunch of time there and ate a bunch of bonus food there and just started slow pedaling again away from there. And then did get back to the route. And then it just kind of, I don't know, I was thinking about this, that, the other. All of a sudden I'm up Reddington Road, like without even thinking about it. It was behind me. And then Chivas Falls Road was the next section, which is this really nasty 4x4 up, down, really technical. I crashed there hard during my first AZT. It's like consequential crash. And I was still in this weird headspace where I was like somewhere else. And so Chivas Falls Road was all of a sudden behind me. And then I just didn't feel a lot of those parts that I was worried about suffering through. And then I got to some more hike-a-bikey stuff. And as I was doing that, my knees really loosened up and started to actually feel better. And somewhere along the way, the way I was thinking about it when I wrote about it was like, I was really listening for my body to say no to me somewhere along the way. Like I was just totally open to that.
Which is, I think, an experience that's very relatable. It's like, give me a sign that it's a no, and almost wanting it to be a no.
Yeah. It didn't seem like yes was going to be a possible answer. I mean, I wanted the yes, but it was like, there wasn't going to be a clear yes. It was just like, or is there not going to be a no?
Yeah.
And so somewhere along the way though, like I stopped listening for the no, and it was just like, okay, I can do this. Just keep going. So.
You gave a really great kind of like history lesson and overview of, some of the history behind the Lemon Push. And I found that really interesting and insightful, and wanted you to, kind of maybe recap that a little bit here.
I'd be honored to, and it deserves it because of the people that deserve the credit for it. So there's, you could say 3 different ways to get to the top of Mount Lemon on a mountain bike. One of them is the way that the Arizona Trail Race is usually taken, and that is just to go up the Catalina Highway from Molino Basin, roughly, to the top to Summerhaven. There's some trails involved at the end, but they're pretty quick that connect the Catalina Highway into the last stretch to Summerhaven. So that's one way, and that's the historic way that the route is taken, more or less. but in 2022, which is the year I started ultra racing, and that was the first Arizona trail race that I watched was that fall. There were 5 single speeders who I had only met briefly. I think 3 of them at the time because I was new to the sport, so I didn't really know them that well. But today they're great friends of mine and family, really. But the yeah, it was Johnny Price, Andrew Stremke, Alexandra Houchin, Connor Atkinson, and Zach Freundlich, who they're all single speeders. They're all friends. They'd made a pact before the race to do this thing that they subsequently named the Lemon Push, which was to take all the trails on the Arizona Trail Wilderness Bypass, bypassing the Push Ridge Wilderness, which is where the hiking version of the trail goes. So it's a really tough route. And I haven't, to this day, I haven't even done the top 3 sections of it. The uppermost 3 sections called Butterfly, Crystal, and the Control Road. But that's what they did, and I believe it took them on average an extra 12 hours versus like what the rest of the riders did, which was to mostly go up the Catalina Highway. But they all made it, and then they all made it to State Line too, like the finish of the 800. And there was a lot of doubt around that, like in the spectators from it, like, is this even possible? Like,
Yeah.
they're giving up their race placement, or they're not going to have a good time. They're going to add all this time to their race. They won't be competitive. There was all this sort of like wonder about how it would work out, but they all made it. And that year in particular, well, the other thing about that year and the finishers of the 800, I believe 8 of the 9 people that made it to the Utah state border were on single speeds, not just those 5. So that landed, and they named the route. That route up, that was always just called the AZT Wilderness Bypass. They named it the Lemon Push, that specific route that they took.
Yeah.
And so subsequently, like, they proved that that riders could get up this other way that wasn't the road. And so John Schilling, the race director, decided after that to adopt part of what they'd ridden, the lower half of it, basically combined with that quicker way into Summerhaven. Once you get to the top of Mount Bigelow, the trails, for anyone that knows, are called Secret, 1918, and Sunset, that connect basically from the top of Mount Bigelow from the lower part of the Lemon Push. And that, I've heard that route called, and that's the route we do in the race, called the Lemon Push Light, because it's not the Lemon Push. It's only like half of the lemon.
Right.
But most of the community doesn't make that distinction. We just call.
Yeah, I didn't know that until I read your recap. So that was, good info.
Yeah, and I think, and it's like, as someone, again, history again, like I care about those things. I think we should honor the effort of those 5.
Absolutely.
My knowledge, no one else has done that yet, and that route they took, and it's worth like honoring as its own thing with its own name. And so I don't know. I just don't want it to be lost that the Lemon Push is not what we do in the race. We do a way easier version of it. That the trails that we don't do in the race, the Butterfly Trail, from where it leaves Incinerator Ridge, descends over 2,000 feet.
Oh, wow.
They climb back up. So that's the kind of stuff that, like, that's why we can't call it the Lemon Push, what we do in the race.
So you did what you're now calling the Lemon Squeeze?
Yeah, I don't know if I get to name it, but what I did was collectively, from when I did the lemon drop earlier in the ride, and then the following day went back up La Milagrosa, then coming back on the northbound and picked up where La Milagrosa ended and did the rest of the lemon drop to the top of Mount Lemon, including Aspen Draw at the top, which is not part of the AZT route. And so all told, I went both up and down every inch of the lemon drop within the overall yo-yo. It was non-sequential, the up part, because La Milagrosa happened like earlier in the ride than the rest of it. But yeah, I covered every inch both ways. So, and I don't know if anyone's done that.
Yeah,
So,
no, that's super cool. You made a comment. You were thinking about doing the entire lemon push, the proper lemon push, and you made the decision kind of in real time. Said, that was their ride. This one's mine, and I guess you did lemon push light. Is that with La Milagrosa at the bottom?
yeah, I did. I did the lemon push light with La Milagrosa at the bottom and Aspen Draw at the top. So both of those are not part of what we do in the race.
So why did you make that decision?
Yeah, I really felt I'd weighed it for days ahead of time if I got there feeling good, which I did. I felt good that morning, really good. That like maybe I'd drop in on Butterfly and follow their route. I wanted to know what it was like and like felt like it'd be a way to not like tip of the hat to them sort of thing.
Yeah.
But then when I got close and got there, it was like, that's really their thing. Like I didn't want to, and I did recognize like that I had this opportunity to do the drop like up and down, which felt like its own different thing. And so I chose that. And it wasn't a hard decision in the moment. It was just like, yeah, they did that. I could follow that, but like I kind of want to go do this other thing.
Yeah.
So I did.
It's a great thing about touring it. You can do it however you want to. And
That's right.
yeah, kind of make those decisions in the moment based on how you're feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. I was glad that I didn't like struggle over that. I don't regret it either.
Yeah.
I do want to at some point do those other 3 trail sections just to know, but
I bet you will.
Yeah.
You sound like the kind of person that will one day. So finishing up your day 9 and in the end of the ride, you finished to gunfire, an array of lights, and the sounds of a helicopter overhead. So it sounds fucking crazy. Like what was going on?
Yeah, I mean, I can't answer that question. What was going on? I can just
that
tell
was
you
your welcome home party, I guess. People were just excited that you finished.
That's just the Arizona desert on a Thursday. Yeah, I was Tiger Mine Road, which is still I think over 100 miles or 100 miles or so from Picket Post, but it was late that night, and I'm starting to look for a place to sleep. I got there and I'd just been passed by this camper, which it's a Thursday night. They're going out there to camp, but I pulled off onto the trail and I started up the next rise, and there's farther out Tiger Mine, there were all these lights, and I wasn't expecting to see any lights out there. It's kind of like a backcountry area where there might be a handful of random campers, but there were a lot of lights, and some of them were police lights, it looked like. And so something was going on that I didn't know what. And then looking around, and there were lights on the horizon, like lines of them that were like little communities probably, or I mean, if I had to guess, that's what they were, but none of it was like adding up in my brain as to where things should be. But in of itself, that was like, whatever, like, Matt, you don't know your geography here. Like, you're just misinterpreting what's where, or the depth was off or whatever.
Right.
And so I keep going, not really thinking that much more about that. But then I start hearing these, they sounded like large helicopters, like very powerful helicopters, more than one, at least 2, maybe 3. And they made several passes high overhead, not close overhead, but I'd look up and there are no lights on them. So, which is, I think even military helicopters usually would have lights on them.
Yeah, that's weird.
There's that. And then, interspersed through all of this is like, it's Arizona. Again, it's not that weird because it's Arizona, but there's like gunfire.
Yeah.
From my left, from my right, from ahead. It's like, how are they even in that spot? Like, I'm in the middle of nowhere here. Why is there gunfire? And meanwhile, like, so all these 3 things, and I'm the one thing out there probably for 20 square miles that's not one of them, that has like a big bright headlamp attached to my head. bopping through the forest. So I felt there was a moment where I was like, oh, if I've ever been a target for some
Yeah.
for like alien abduction or like being shot by somebody, like it's right now. But I just kind of like, there's a lot of things like that happen out there where you either let it get in your head or you don't. And I just didn't. So yeah.
Well, I'm glad you made it. I'm glad you made it through. I'm glad you made it through the whole thing, especially they made it a little interesting and exciting there at the end for you. So I think the most important question looming from this entire conversation is how was your truck when you got back?
Yeah. So the next day, I had a long ride the next day still, 18 hours or something. And just kind of like pushing for the end then. And yeah, I was thinking about, is the truck going to be there? It's going to have all its windows, is all this stuff. And it was fine. Nobody touched it.
Good.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you've had some time to reflect on your experience out there and probably a long drive home and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
What have been your takeaways and your personal reflections from your experience out there doing the maybe probably the first person ever yo-yo the 300?
Yeah, I've still got to sit with that a little bit. Like I haven't fully processed the sum total of it, but it was like there was a lot. It was really a metamorphosis of my psyche kind of going on out there, and some healing. A lot of healing happened out there. As always, like I kind of finished it in a pretty different spot in my head than I started it. So. But it was strong. Like I didn't speak about this part, but there's and I have yet to write about it, but the last section of the 300 northbound is this thing called Alamo Canyon, and it's you look at it on a graph, like a elevation chart, it looks pretty downhill, but there's a lot of uphills sprinkled in there, and bunch of them involve like hiking, and it's rocky and there's catclaw and stuff. And so the narrative of that, like in my own head and in the way that my friends talked about it, it's always like this detestable, awful way to finish the 300 because it feels like you'd be down at the finish in no time at all, but it's really kind of arduous.
Yeah, I've heard that.
That night finishing, I didn't have any of that. It was just joy. It was like, and there were a lot of things feeding that. It was like a steady 60 degrees the whole time. I was descending through these draws and up on ridges, which is so different than the rest of the time I'd have out there, where just like a 100-foot descent would mean 20-degree temperature drop into a draw. And then I'd climb back out, and it was really hard to moderate temperature. Like I rode that whole thing that night in a tank top, and I really didn't want it to end. I was just like, and I wasn't thinking about the rocks or the hiking or whatever. I was just like loving it. And so the little piece I was going to write about that was, I've done that section. I've finished on it several times, or I've continued through on the 800 several times. And it's always been like this kind of like painful thing that I wish wasn't. And this time was different. And it's called Alamo Canyon. So I decided I was going to name that last piece, Remember the Alamo, and that's the one that I'll remember.
I love that, man. Well, that's that's incredible, man. I appreciate you like sharing the whole journey with us, both on the podcast and taking it along on social media. And I'll advocate one more time for the book in some capacity. I was just, it is really cool that you closed out the year and started a new one, doing this epic adventure, going not only like traversing the landscape, but traversing your own, life situations and working through those. And, we're at a season of life where everybody's setting resolutions for the next year, and won't get into all your personal resolutions, but as they relate to bike packing, what are your goals or resolutions for 2025? What do you got in store? If you got anything planned or any goals?
Oh, they're huge.
All right.
Huge. Can be bigger. I'm going to attempt the Triple Crown this year.
Oh, fuck yes. All right.
Yeah. On a single speed.
Of course.
That's what I want. And then I have, I'll say it out loud. It'll put a target on me, but I have a chance. I have a shot at Andrew Stremke's Triple Crown overall time record on a single speed. I've ridden the Colorado Trail and Arizona Trail quick enough that kind of puts it in reach if I can do a decent Tour Divide and have similar efforts on those other two trails. And so, it's a lot to ask for to even finish the Tour Divide to begin with, which I haven't done before.
Yeah.
So these are like aspirational, but yeah, that's what I want to do. I'm turning 50 this year, and that's not why I'm doing this thing this year, but because of the journey I've been on mentally, like it's given me a strength that is also physical, that there's a part of me that feels younger physically even about to turn 50 than I did in my late 30s. And so I'm going to lean into that and like just see what my body can do this year. That's my resolution. And I know it won't last forever.
Yeah, you got to make hay while the sun shines, Yeah,
I'm going to go big this year or try.
Dude, that's epic, man. I can't wait for your experiences that you'll have and just to get to follow along, man. And shots fired to Andrew Stremke. Where you at, Andrew?
I love Andrew. Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, he's freaking great. And competition is great, man. I mean, this is all good stuff. Have you ever ridden in Big Bend?
I'm sorry?
Have you ever ridden in Big Bend?
I have not. No.
All right. Well, if you finish your Triple Crown and you still have a taste for the desert, we'll be releasing our West Texas Showdown in Big Bend. We're going to host it in November. Dates to be determined. I'm actually headed out there next week to do some finalizing of the route and meet with superintendent and all kinds of logistical stuff. But if you're itching for more, man, there's some more desert out there we'll have waiting for you.
Oh, yeah. I'd love to. Yeah, we'll see. I'd love to come ride one of your events, and that one sounds awesome. We'll see if there's any little pieces of me left after.
Yeah, we'll see how the 50-year-old version of yourself does after the Triple Crown. But anyway, dude, absolute pleasure talking to you and getting to meet you, man. I've been enjoying following along, and it's just great to chat with you. I really appreciate you sharing everything with me and my audience today. It's been an absolute delight.
Thank you, Patrick. I feel the same. It was great to get to meet you, and we had a pretty deep conversation on a lot of things. So, and I appreciate those sorts of conversations too. So thank you.
I do too. Well, thank you very much. Go enjoy the rest of your day, and don't forget, go ride your damn bike.
All right. You too, buddy.
All right. Take care. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode, and a big shout out and congratulations goes to Matt Annabel. Really appreciated him coming on the podcast and bearing his soul with me and with you, and showing us that there are lots of ways to approach bikepacking. It always doesn't have to be an official timed attempt. There can be other motivators, other reasons for going out and riding your damn bike that are equally as valid. And it really, no matter if it's an official time or not, an absolutely oppressive effort. And I really enjoyed hearing all about it. And again, I'll make a plug for you to go and follow up after this episode if you haven't already, and check out his daily recaps on his social media. They'll add a lot more color and perspective to the conversation that you just listened to. All right. Well, I am headed out to Big Bend next week with my friend Andrew Honorma, and I believe my friend Connor, who's been on the podcast many years ago when we did our bikepacking basics episode. I believe he's going to be joining us. But the purpose of that trip is to finalize the route for West Texas Showdown, and to just work on some of the logistical challenges like getting permits and finding a place to park hundreds of cars and for people to sleep and food to eat and all those kinds of stuff. So we're going out there next week. I'm hoping to finalize all that, and in short order, I will be releasing all the information about West Texas Showdown. So I'm very excited. This will be the first year that we will roll out the entire Texas Showdown series from East Texas to Central Texas to West Texas. It's going to be freaking awesome. I'm so hyped up. And I know from all the messages that I get that there's a lot of people who are equally looking forward to the West Texas Showdown. All I can tell you right now is that we are pretty much solidly locked in hosting that in November. The actual date to be determined, but I'm waiting to finalize some of that stuff until after this next week. So if you are one of the people that is interested in joining us in West Texas, you shouldn't have to wait too much longer. We're going to be not only releasing information about the West Texas Showdown, but Andrew and I are going to record an episode all about West Texas Showdown while we're out there. So there's going to be a lot of information coming very soon. So until then, thank you so much for being here. Happy New Year. It is always a pleasure. And until next time, you know what to do. Go ride your damn bike.
It was the middle of the night. You grabbed your knife and you held it tight. The sounds of beasts kept you awake. The sounds they made kept you afraid. In the morning, you packed your bike. Memories forgotten from the previous night. You rode faster than ever before. Was it your imagination or merely folklore? Fear turned into strength as you pushed further. Every pedal stroke stronger and firmer. Your bike feels weightless, your legs aren't tired. You think to yourself, just a few more miles. Bikes, oh death, bikes.